Hi, everybody. This is Michelle Kline. So I am the host. Hello. And I am also the founder of DogCo Launch, which is the place for pet care companies to grow and scale. This fits perfectly with this content series that we are currently doing on the DogCo Secrets Podcast, which is about the scaling phases for pet care companies. So just to catch you up, if you are jumping in on this series just this week, so I have worked with about 200 companies in the pet care industry to this point, and one thing that I have been really focused on my seat in the industry is looking at, can I standardize some of the common bottlenecks, pitfalls, like places that companies get stuck? Can I standardize or create this pathway for what those issues probably are going to be for you as you scale your company, and help define ways for companies to get through them more quickly, less painfully, because that is so important. And it's so easy to get stuck at certain pieces of this growth journey, and I don't want that for you. It's going to be hard. Either way, it's going to be hard. Either way, you're going to have to learn lessons also that are going to be unique to you. But there are so many things that I do see from the seat that I sit in the industry where I can see patterns, I can see and start to pull this data and talk about the collective experience that a lot of companies will have as they grow. So last week, I talked about the scaling phase of, these are rough numbers, but approximately $100,000 in annual revenue to $200,000 in annual revenue. And I talked about how this is a really tough window to navigate in the growth of this business model, because it's enough work that you need to have a team, but usually it's not quite enough work that you can be fully out of the field. So it's a window of time where you have 1 foot in the field. It's going to feel at least full time. And then 1 foot in what could be a full-time administrative role. And that is going to feel like a lot. It's going to feel like a season of give. It is a tough season to navigate out of. So last week I talked about strategies to get through that season to that 200K mark. And again, these are loose numbers. Like, depending on how you've approached the growth of your business, you may hit some of these pain points earlier, you may hit some of them later, but generalities for when I typically see people hit the bottlenecks that I'm going to be talking about. This week, we are talking about the phase of roughly 200,000 to 300,000 in revenue. So let's get into it. Let me set the stage for you. From what I have seen, typically in this phase, we tend to have enough just volume in the system that some of the pain points we were feeling between 100,000 and 200,000 start to ease up a little bit. One of those particularly being resources. You know, if we've set up your profit margin, your labor costs well, you should start to feel a little bit of breathing room. Some of that depends on the cost of living in your service area, how much you have had to be paying yourself, how much you need to be making. But we typically start to see a little bit of movement. It feels like we have a little bit more margin, a little bit more resources. It feels a little bit less high pressure that we personally are in the field as much. This actually wasn't a bottleneck I was planning on talking about, but it came to mind, so I'll mention it. That's not going to feel very comfortable to you to step out of the field. So this may actually be the very first bottleneck you have to dismantle, which is yourself. If you're a pet care business that wants to level up, then this is for you. The DogCo Business Summit is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, September 26th to the 28th. We still have tickets available, and we just announced that we are going digital. So you can get your in-person ticket or your digital ticket at dogcosummit.com. In some ways, not even in some ways, in so many ways, it will feel safer to stay super in the field because it'll feel comfortable and familiar. So even though you'll be at a place where you don't have to for the sake of the revenue, and where I would argue you shouldn't be still in the field because there's so much of a bigger return for the business for your time if you spend it on growing the business. It's going to be a weird feeling where it's like, I've worked so hard to get here, but now I don't want to step out. So that's actually the first bottleneck you are going to run into. I have found is this temptation to keep a foot in the field, even though you no longer need to from a volume standpoint. So that's number one. And the reason that is so important actually gets into the rest of what I was planning to talk about, which is this is going to be a window of time in your business from what I have seen historically, where it no longer becomes a business where you can kind of like bootstrap all the systems yourself to continue getting ahead. It becomes a business that is big enough that you have to start organizing some help for yourself. The better you are about removing yourself from the field and putting yourself into the full admin position, the further you can get into this revenue level, maybe with lower levels of admin or with like less of an investment on this side. Ironically, the more you keep yourself kind of stuck in the field, the more you're going to need to bring in admin help, which can create this really tough dynamic where you're like, I'm almost like promoting someone over me in some ways because I'm in the field while they're doing admin. I really recommend we don't do that. Let's get you out of the field. Let's have the discipline to do that. I know it's hard. I really do. I struggled with that because it was scary to choose a role with the business that was so new. And so it felt very vulnerable. Like, man, I'm becoming a real owner. That's what that season felt like to me. But we have to do it because at this size, you need help. So I categorize this as the first real structure building stage in your business, where having these standardized systems, having the documentation on some of your systems, it becomes not just wise, it becomes required for the business to continue to grow. Because at this point, you most likely have at least 10 part-time staff. Most likely, depending on your pricing, it may be less, but most likely you probably have 10 or more people. Typically, when I work with a business that's around the $200,000 mark, they have between like 10 and 12 people at least. And that is enough people and enough movement and growth in the business that if we don't have a set way that we do things, it becomes very clear to clients and it actually starts to become pretty unsafe. Now, there are a lot of safety concerns in this business model, even when you're solo. Even if you don't have a team at all, that's a very legitimate consideration. At this size, you're doing enough volume that from my perspective, it's less of like a what if something bad happens and more of a based off of how many live animals we see and how many people we have working with live animals, something bad will happen. It kind of just depends on when. So we want to get ahead of that. We want to start to structure the business, to put things in place. So that's one of the characterizations of this window of time from what I have seen is that having more of the structure, more of the SOPs, more of the documentation, the like clear if this, then this is how we do things becomes critically important to the business succeeding and the business staying alive. And we reach a place where we have to have help to be able to do all the things that the business requires administratively. Now, again, depending on how good you are about getting yourself out of the field, how much of like a systems person you are, you may not hit the have to have help stage of this model till a little bit further, but I will tell you it's probably coming. And this is going to be a bit of a tension in this window of time in the business because as long as your numbers are set up with the appropriate margins, like, 50-ish% labor, 20 to 30% profit, you'll have margin to reinvest. And you need to start reinvesting in the business, investing in getting yourself some help. And it will be really hard to know where to put those resources because they're limited. It's not like we have unlimited money now to spend on investing in admin, investing in some of these resources. We have enough that we can invest some, but every area in your business is going to need it at this stage, every area. So it's like, okay, where do I put it? And that'll be a question. Couple other things that I have seen characterizing this window of time in your business, this 200-ish to 300-ish thousand. Most likely, you're hustling really hard for leads at this point in time. This isn't necessarily like a blanket truth in this stage. Some of it depends a little bit on how quickly you got to this stage and how much traction you have on the lead flow. But it's not uncommon that companies I work with in this stage are really focused on getting enough leads to maintain their team. Like, we don't necessarily have like a really repeatable lead flow where it's like predictably every week or every month, I am bringing in this many leads from these clearly defined sources. So typically in this stage of the business, it still feels like we're hustling really hard for leads and growth to keep up with the team growth and the needs of the team. This season feels a little bit like a seesaw, I've noticed, where it's like, it's very delicate. It's like we can be really overstaffed or really understaffed really quickly. That is true in other seasons as well, but I think because the lead flow typically isn't super predictable yet, but the team size has grown, you're going to feel that pain point a little more directly here. And then the final one, or the final thing that I characterize this window of time by, I've noticed this is a really delicate window for the owner losing focus. So we've just done this huge push of effort to get over the $200,000 mark. If you listened last week, you heard that like that's an area that's like very whirlwind heavy. It's really exhausting. We're getting pulled into the field over and over again. And so we kind of break through that. We get to this 200,000 and we can be on a little bit of a high of like, ooh, I'm starting to get my stuff together. I'll keep this PG in case you have children in the car, but I'm starting to get my stuff together. I can do this. And that is such a dangerous season because we can start really getting the temptation to add new service lines or, maybe I'll open another business. That wasn't that hard. It was. We just temporarily forgot. And so this is a season marked by a real risk of detracting your focus away from what really matters. I kind of just segued us here, but let's talk about risks of this season. So we've talked about what it's categorized by. What are the biggest risks for not moving forward out of this season? So number one, continuing to get stuck in the whirlwind. So in the previous window, the 100,000 to 200,000, that looked like you just don't have time to do anything administratively. You're in the field so much. When you do have time out of the field, it's like, what do I even focus on? In this window, as long as you have gotten yourself out of the field, typically that whirlwind is going to look like, I now have time, but there's just so much that I'm just focusing on getting through all of the administrative work, not building systems for the administrative work. And again, it's tough because that work has to get done. It has to get done, but we can't get stuck in it. We have to build the systems to manage the volume of the work, or we will never get ahead in the growth. So getting stuck in the whirlwind, getting stuck, scheduling is going to be a big one here. That's a problem that'll grow with you as the business grows. But scheduling can be a big one here where it's like this has gone from something that was a little more simple and direct to something that feels like the advanced level of Tetris. There's just more. So that is a risk, staying really hyper-focused on lower level returning work. Number two, losing focus. There can be a bit of this like, okay, it's starting to come together. I now have a lot more time. I have a lot more control over my time since I'm not getting pulled into the field every other hour. And so we start getting this like, ooh, I could do new things. I have good ideas. And that is true. And we have to stay focused because I promise you, we're just at the beginning. And every time you start something new, you start all the way back at that first level. And we forget how big of a give it is to get from that first level to a few levels in. You got to stay focused here. We have to keep going deeper. Next, biggest risk in this area. So when you start bringing on some help for yourself, first, there's going to be a pretty big learning curve there, especially if this is your first business or if this is your first admin hire, especially if you don't have some of these sections of the business super defined yet. Like, how do we train people? How do we deal with the whirlwind? What are the systems for somebody else to deal with the whirlwind? There are a couple of risks there. The first is a lack of efficient use of funds that go into admin. And that's not their fault, whoever you hired. It's just like, if we don't really know how to tell them what to do, we can't expect that they'll do things the most efficiently that they could. Like we have to have the system to give them. So if we're bringing people in on a like half-cooked system or a not cooked at all system, that's going to be less efficient. There's going to be a big learning curve. There's a real risk that we lose people as they're coming through that system. A good admin, I have found, needs at least enough structure to know how to succeed. That's probably true of every employee type that you hire, like for any position. So if we don't have enough structure to bring them into, because we're learning too, and it's totally new to us, there's a risk of churn. It can get very expensive. And then the alternative of that is that there's also a risk of someone getting into an admin position for you. They actually do a really good job. They are more skilled at it, and we don't have our systems in place to capture the knowledge that they are bringing to the business. It's like a catch-22. We either struggle for people to contribute enough in this season because we don't have like set ways for them to succeed, or we struggle with they succeed a little bit too well. Not really, but like they're actually very skilled, very efficient. There's a risk of letting them grow into a role where they're going to leave a giant hole when they leave. And they'll leave at some point. That's healthy. No one stays for forever in a job. And so we want to make sure that if they are becoming really valuable, that we're actually looking ahead. We are having them document what they do. We're building things around their role, because otherwise that's a big risk, is that you'll get somebody in, they'll be really good at it, they'll contribute a lot, the role will get built around them, and then they will leave. And there's just a huge hole, and it's going to knock you all the way back to the starting place of that position. Okay, so the fourth risk of this window of time in your business is going to be, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but safety incidents due to newly increased volume without having systems in place. There are a couple risks here. I mean, one, there's the actual legitimate risk of something happening. I like to think about it this way. If we can expect that 5% of appointments will have something go wrong, like something go really wrong at them. Well, if we're only doing 50 appointments a month, that means that 2.5 appointments, we can round up to 3, say, will have something go wrong. Maybe a door got left unlocked. Maybe a harness wasn't put on appropriately at the start of a walk. The dog got loose, or there was a risk that they could, and the pet owner is upset. Maybe we forgot to kennel the dog at the end of the appointment, whatever it is. So 3 out of 50. When we are doing 500 appointments a month, that means that 25 appointments had a safety incident happen at 5%. And the chances of something being a much bigger deal if 25 different things go wrong is a lot higher. So that's the first risk when it comes to safety, is a legitimate thing happening. The second concern when it comes to safety is actually an incident not happening per se, but because there is so much volume and you're coming into more of an awareness, which you've already had, like we know this is a higher risk type of work. Live animals in people's homes, like live people. It's higher risk for sure, but it's going to be that kind of increased mental load on you of how many people are out in the field at one time in so many different situations. Y'all, you're going to come up against stuff where you're like, I had no idea I needed to know how to problem solve that. No idea I needed to know that. And that's only going to increase exponentially in this stage of your business. And so that's going to come with a mental load for you. Whether or not it actually comes with an increase in something bad happening, it will come with an increased fear and realization that it could, because you're going to be putting out a lot of fires. You're going to be kind of dancing around. There are just way more people and way more animals connected to you than there ever have been. Okay, so how do we get through this season? What solutions can we put in place to help get to the next level? That depends a little bit on what you want to solve for. Just to be totally honest. It also depends a little bit on what you have invested in for your business. So we talked about this last week as well. If you've invested in a resource like DogCo, it doesn't have to be DogCo, but where you've already purchased these SOPs, we're just tweaking them and adapting them, or you've gotten the chance to work with business owners who are like so much further ahead because you're in a program, whether it's DogCo or someone else. When I was bringing up my business, there were not programs like they are now. There weren't coaches like there are now. You have a lot of good options. So part of this window depends a little bit on what you've invested in, depends a little bit on your end goals for the business, but here are a few broad things that I see. Number one, as you can afford it, considering admin by delegating for your time. So I talked a little earlier in the episode, there's this risk of promoting someone really over yourself in this window. It's like I'm underwater. I know I have resources to put in to the system. What do I start with? We want to start with whatever is taking the most amount of your time. So there are two positions I recommend you start with as you have margin to afford them. Number one, first and foremost, is a bookkeeper. You have to have financial clarity on your numbers to know what you can and can't afford to invest in. Now, if you are excellent at managing your own books and you're disciplined enough to do it on a monthly basis, I'm not tied to you have to have a bookkeeper. With the caveat, I think even if this is something in your skill set, it is a low leverage return for the use of your time compared to what it costs to outsource. So whether you do it now or in the future, I do think everyone should have a bookkeeper. But if it's in your skill set and you want to put resources elsewhere for now, I could be talked down for now. For me, I actually got a bookkeeper, I want to say right at about $200,000, life-changing. Because for the first time, I had clear information on the numbers in my business. I had never had that before. You cannot make good strategic, data-driven decisions without knowing the numbers in your business. So bookkeeper first. Second, I recommend that we train someone on your team with the resources that we can continue to invest so that they can train new team members in the field as you hire. So as far as return for your time, this is one of the best trades that you can make. I had tracked my time through our hiring process and realized that every new hire I brought into the business took me 20 to 25 hours before they were ready to be in the field themselves, producing revenue. That's a lot of your time as the owner. And it's not a skill that you have to be the one to do. It may feel like it right now, but I promise you, we can train someone else on how to train. Yes, that means we have to define your systems. Yes, that means we have to take the time to teach someone. But as your business continues to pick up speed, we were hiring 2 to 4 people every single month. If I had kept training, we wouldn't have gotten to the place where we could hire 2 to 4 people every month because I would not have any time to market. But let's say somehow I figured that out. That means that I would have been putting 100 hours a month into training new team members. That's something somebody else can do. So that's what I recommend. Bookkeeper first, then training a trainer for your team. Second solution, we need those basic SOPs and structure. Now, this does not mean that we need every possible document you will ever need for your business. We don't yet, but we do need a training manual. And honestly, you need it before now, but this is just the window where you'll stop growing. In my experience, if you don't have things like this, generally, there's always an exception to the rule, but we need a set way that you do things. Here's how to provide each service. Here's how we train people to provide services so that we know what they know. Really important stuff. So that's going to be the second thing. We need that standardization. We need that basic structure. Again, it doesn't have to be every possible thing they could ever come up against or every possible document you would ever need, but we need enough that you confidently know someone in the field knows exactly what to do and that you have a way that you can test and assess that knowledge. And then final solution, if we're focused on continued growth, is that I recommend focusing on consistency and lead flow, which comes from having data to analyze. So this is an important season in your business, in my perspective, to start collecting more data, to start analyzing more data, and to start looking for consistency in lead flow for your business, which the data will kind of tell you, like, where are people coming from? What is the return on the marketing that I am doing? What generates the best return for us? Because what we really want to be getting at is more predictability, which is going to make hiring easier. It's going to make growth easier. And so we want to focus on, what do I need to put in on the marketing to get out? And let the data tell us where our time and resources should be going. All right, everybody. So I got really good feedback last week. It was super, super helpful. Maybe a couple dozen people reach out and say it was actually our highest download week ever for the podcast. So y'all seem to be vibing on this series, which is super exciting. Let me know what you thought of this one. Let me know what resonated. Let me know what didn't. I'm looking for things that also break the pattern, because that helps me build better tools that help all of us and help elevate our industry. So thank you so much, and I will see you soon.